Your first step is going to be to find your house or the things that you made. It should have your name on both pieces if you have a separate roof and a separate base. Miss Butler made this one, so it has her initials there. And carefully, once you've found your house, you need to rinse it off in the sink. The houses get dusty in the kiln, and then the paint won't stick to them as well. Our houses are still fragile, so do this carefully. You don't really need to dry it. They'll just absorb the water and dry right away. After you've rinsed off your house or your bowl, take a marker and write your name on the bottom if it's not on there. Okay, the moment we've all been waiting for. Today we get to paint our ceramic houses or another object if you made a bowl, for example, using Cray-Pas, which are oil pastels. These right here in this box. And we're going to be doing a resist effect where the Cray-Pas are going to go on first, and then on top we're going to put some sort of an ink or a watercolor paint to fill in the spaces around the Cray-Pas. So after a little experimenting, we realized that a tempera, a water-based paint, works the best with these Cray-Pas, creating a resist. So the Cray-Pas have oil. You put those on first, and then later will come with tempera paint, which is a highly pigmented water-based paint, and will paint over the Cray-Pas, and it will resist and it won't attach to where you put the Cray-Pas. So check it out. Okay, so before you guys begin putting color on your house, we want you to think about a plan. A couple options are doing bright colors on your bowl like these, and then filling in the background with black tempera paint. Another option is to do, if you want to leave your background white, you don't actually put any paint after you do the Cray-Pas. You can still paint over the white sections with a shiny paint later, and it'll give it a nice finished look without having to add a background color. So those are a couple options. Think about, do you want your house to be really bright with that black background, or do you want to go with a different color background? We'll have blue and red and yellow and orange. Our last step is going to be to put a shiny clear paint on the surface of our houses so that it has a nice finished look. It'll also make them waterproof. Before you start painting, you're going to plan out your idea. You're going to grab one of these planning sheets depending on what type of house you have. This is a pitched roof design for people who have the triangular face. This is one for a rectangular prism if you had more of a box-shaped house. This is a custom design one. You're going to draw the faces of your house, and this will be for kids who did a design, kind of an invented design, not one of the other ones. And then finally, this is a generic cylinder design. So if you had a flat circle roof or a cone roof, you would get this one. So my house is basically the rectangular prism design. So this is the one I'm going to use. If you're having trouble deciding, you can look at your worksheet and see. This is back from the LT4 design worksheet. This is Sophia's. Her house was kind of a pitch roof design, so she would grab that planning sheet. Now if you want to add in some of the details of your house, you can. So this one has a little door like this, and then a circle, and then there's a little piece that comes out like this, and then a piece down here. So when you're doing some coloring, you can think about those details and kind of decorate around them. One thing I noticed about my texturing is I use this circle stamp to make a design on the surface of my clay. So I think I may incorporate that circle into my design a little bit. I was thinking, you know, pink circles could really show up a lot. And then maybe stripes on my roof. I'm going to just label this my roof. And then I can even do my base because this won't go back in the kiln. So I can put color on my base on the underside of my house too, so that it just has color everywhere. I'm not going to take super long on this practice. I'm just going to think about some ideas. Right now I'm using white, and remember our clay is white, so it's not going to really show up. But when you put a background color, like the black tempera paint or some watercolor, everything but the white will turn the color of the paint, and the white will stay there. So I'm going to add some white in some of my stripes. I think that could look really good. And then remember, white also tints a color, so you can make this a light yellow by adding white on top of the Cray-Pas. Now the last part of your practice is to choose a background color that you're going to paint behind the Cray-Pas. So get one of these to share with a couple people, and then some clean water and a brush. And here's where I'm going to experiment a little bit. I know I've got access to black tempera paint, so I'm going to put a little black on here. I'm going to rinse my brush. and then try different other few colors. This is called charging the paint, where you add a little bit of water to start getting it saturated first. Okay. And then I'm just going to test out how it looks on different faces of my house and see which color combination I like the best. Turns out that maybe I'll use 2 colors of paint over my Cray-Pas. Maybe I'll just do one for the whole house. So that's how the black is going to look. Okay, so I tried a few different background colors. That was red, black, green, that was an ugly orange, and a blue. In the end, I think I'm going to do black and red for my paints behind my Cray-Pas. Now, this planning sheet's finished. I'm ready to hand this to the teacher as my pass to actually paint my real house. Yay! So as I'm coloring my house with these Cray-Pas, I'm noticing that the texture of the clay makes it so that I have to push pretty hard to get the Cray-Pas to go onto the surface, and sometimes it just doesn't go on there perfectly. It's going to look cool when you get the background color on there. It'll kind of fill in some of the gaps, and I would recommend that you try to do as much of the surface as possible with the Cray-Pas before you put on the watercolor paint. Now remember, if the Cray-Pas gets underneath the paper, you can always just peel the paper off to get more. And I even am able to use this little teeny piece here to get into my windowsills and really get that white to go all the way in. A big Cray-Pas crayon would not fit all the way back there, but this little one is perfect. So don't think that any of these are going to be garbage. You can always use the small pieces to get into the small parts of your clay house. The thing I'm going to do is, you see how this circle is on this side, and then I'm going to have it wrap around to this side so it continues. I didn't think about this on my planning sheet, but it's a decision that I'm going to make now when I'm actually doing my real house, to have the circle go on the corner of the house. Here's a little trick I've noticed. If you take your thumb, so this is looking kind of messy right here, but if I take my thumb, I can kind of smooth it out like that. And then what ends up happening is my little stamp, you can see the details of the stamp a little bit better now, right? So I'm just going to do that too, and I think that the oil from the pastel is just going to spread then onto the surface and hopefully look a little bit less messy and hopefully a little bit more detail then showing through on these pink stamps. So another decision I did without doing it on the planning sheet was to do some green around the edges here. And then I did some stripes on the inside. I'm almost ready to paint the back. If you do end up using your finger to rub the clay, be careful that it's not sharp. Sometimes this clay comes out of the kiln and the bisqueware can be kind of sharp. You can always use a white Cray-Pas too to smooth it out if it is sharp and kind of smooth out that color without having to rub your finger on it. Now when your house is ready for the paint, if you want to use black, you're going to come over to the sink. I just did black on the base here, and you can see how it filled in behind my Cray-Pas. I'm going to show you now how to do it on the faces of your house. So over the sink, you're going to have a bucket with some black paint in it, and you're going to paint the faces of your house without smearing too much. You're almost like setting the paint on top of the surface. The paint right away is going to start to soak in to the pottery, to the ceramic clay. And I'm just going to do the whole surface, and there'll be some dripping. That's why I'm doing it here over the sink. Okay? Get it on the sides. It's going to start to soak in and dry while I'm doing the whole house. And I'm working pretty quickly because this part can be messy. The magic happens when you rinse off this black paint. You can start to see that it is resisting the parts of my design where I have Cray-Pas, because that's an oil surface and this is a water-based ink. Okay, now I don't want to forget to do the inside, so I'm going to go on those surfaces too. Put my paint. My walls don't have any Cray-Pas on them, so I can just paint right on the walls with the black. And then I'm going to make sure I get in the bottom too. Okay. Now where I first painted is already dried. So in a minute I'm actually going to run it under some water, and then I'm going to pat it off with a towel so that I can pull away some of my Cray-Pas design. Okay, so yep, this looks super ugly. Now watch this. Now when I go to rinse it, it'll take the ink off the surface with the oil pastels. Okay, I'm just going to rinse it a little bit, pretty quickly all the way around, and you'll see that my design starts to reappear. In the inside, the more I rinse, the more the black comes off, and it kind of turns a gray. I'm going to try not to take off too much black and leave it like that. And now you can see my house design has come through and the black paint is in the background. My last step is to take a paper towel and dry it off. The cool part about the India ink is at the end we can put a clear coat of paint on it, and then it'll make our pottery house shiny, our clay house shiny. So I'm just going around dabbing off the extra water, and in some cases it takes off the extra ink. I'm not smearing though with the towel, I'm just dabbing. And I did have some water left on the inside. Clean that up a little bit. Some of you, if you want a real antique or old look to your house, this is going to be a great way to achieve. Here's an example of the crayons with a red tempera background. This is kind of a pink tempera background. This bowl is the red tempera background without any of the shiny paint on top. And here's two more examples of black. So these are just to give you some ideas of the different background colors you can use over your crayons. So to sum up, you're going to do this at your table. Then you're going to color your house with the crayons at your table. Then when you're ready to paint, make sure you're doing it where you have a tablecloth, and you're going to bring your house on top of the tablecloth, and then you're going to let this dry. When the tempera has soaked into the surface of the clay, that's when you can bring your whole house over to the sink and rinse it. Now you can see that it's not shiny over here, and it is shiny here. Do you guys know why? That's where the crayons is. Now I'm ready to rinse. No, it's not drying on the crayons because it's resisting the crayons, and it'll just reappear. And then at the very end, you're going to take this, the forever in the demo video about the dog color that zaps you. This is clear, shiny paint that will go on top of your house or your bowl as a finishing step.